Have you ever given a speech, worked up a speech, practiced it, and you're just starting to get it going, and suddenly you realized you had no clue what that speech is about? You kind of got this idea in your head. Maybe it'd be nice to talk about this, it'd be kind of interesting, it'd be a different way to do things, but you don't really know what exactly the speech is about. If you haven't had that problem, that's great, because I definitely have. And the thing about it is that you know you've got these things you want to talk about. When you start to put it into a speech format, it just doesn't work. And I started to look at this pieces of a speech I had there. And I was thinking, I don't know why this doesn't fit together. I don't know what's missing. I know there's something missing here. There's some things that just don't fit together. But I don't know what it is. And so because I was confused, I started to go through those books on speaking. I started to read through the books on speaking, and I came across one that started talking about the premise. The premise, how important the premise is. You have a premise. What's your premise of your story? And the premise will determine the direction of everything. And all I could think was, what the heck is a premise? So I started to look it up in the dictionary, what a premise was. And it just confused me. Didn't make any sense at all. Didn't help me write a story. The dictionary definition had nothing to do with writing a story, which is what I was trying to do, trying to write this speech and write the story of the speech and get it interesting, have it all come together. I was frustrated. And the more I read about the importance of the premise, and I started to look up premise on the internet and wasn't finding anything until I came across this article by professional speaker Patricia Fripp talking about the premise. And she laid out the premise in such an easy way that I suddenly got it. I suddenly thought, oh, there it is. That makes a lot of sense. And the way I remember it was this ACB. ACB. And I thought, that makes sense. What Patricia says here makes sense. And I went back to that speech I was trying to write, and suddenly it became a lot easier. Each part of the premise gave me a process to step through that speech. With each part of the premise, each of the three parts, I started going deeper into the speech and understanding more about what it was I should be talking about, what it was my speech was actually saying, and how I could get my speech back on track by understanding that premise and that premise formula. There was power in the premise. There was power in that premise formula. By understanding that premise formula, it stepped me step by step. Stepped me through that speech. Step by step, I went through that speech knowing that premise formula. And today, you're going to learn about that premise formula, Patricia Fripp. You're going to find out about how it kind of focuses in your speech. How to really get you focused on what your speech is about. It's simple, easy to understand, easy to remember. Once you start using it, you discover that it's very quick to put together speeches using the formula. Something that's intuitive, that's obvious. Start to enjoy putting together speeches more. Because you suddenly know what you're talking about before you get up on stage and find out you don't know what the heck you're talking about. And in doing that, you just look better on stage. You look a heck of a lot better on stage, and you're talking about something that you know where it's going, you know what's going to happen with it. And the first part of the premise formula is A. And the A part of the premise formula is something that helps you understand your target. My targets mean just basically who. The A part of the premise formula is all about that target, your target audience. Who are you speaking to? That's what it's about. A is all about who. Once you understand how that A section of the premise formula works, which is, again, very quick, very easily, you discover, okay, that's who I'm talking to. That's who this speech is for. That's only part of the whole, but just that part of the premise formula is very powerful, very effective. And the first part is simply any blank. Any blank. And blank is simply you fill in the blank. So who are you talking to? Any person? Any speaker? Any animal? Who are you talking about in your speech? Any is a powerful word, and you just fill in that blank. It's important to understand who your speech is for. When you're writing an introduction, when you're writing the body of your speech, if you don't know really who your speech is for, who it's targeted at, then you miss the boat. Then you miss the whole thing. You think you're going to talk about this for speakers, and you discover that, no, really, it's for any person, even non-speakers. But you want to get that straight up front. Any blank. It also helps you when you're creating the speech. You're thinking, okay, who is this speech for? Who am I really directing this speech for? It's all sorts of people. Could be for. Another way to do it is if you're given a certain audience, if you're in a situation you say, okay, you're going to have to talk to a bunch of lawyers. It's just the way it is. You get maybe booked to do a speech for a bunch of lawyers. Then you know your audience is going to be lawyers. So it's any lawyer. Okay, that narrows your audience. Now you know who you're targeted on, who you're focused on. Any blank, any lawyer. Or if you're giving a speech and you're talking to people who are consultants, be any consultant. But it's important to understand that target right at the beginning. So your audience thinks, oh, that's for me. That speech is just for me. You have an audience of lawyers, the lawyers are thinking, oh, this is for lawyers. This is a speech specifically designed for lawyers, and I can get something out of it as a lawyer that's going to help me. Because if you're giving a speech for lawyers, and yet your speech itself kind of comes off like anybody, anyone, and isn't really targeted for lawyers, then your audience is going to think, you don't get it. I'm a lawyer. I want to hear something for me. Something that targeted me, something that's for me, and only for me. Targeted at lawyers. So the power of this premise, this part of the premise formula, is any blank. It's right at the beginning. It gets you focused on who your audience is and thinking about who your audience is. And the more you think about who your audience is and get that into your head, the better off you are. So once you think of it, okay, this is what the audience is for, lawyers, okay, now when I write this thing, I know it's going to have to be stuff that's specific for lawyers, only for lawyers, all about lawyers. Anything comes out that's non-lawyer focused, okay, got to throw that out. So this part of the premise formula helps define who you're talking about, and that will help to define what you write out in your speech draft. Now after you figure out who you're talking about, next one is C. after you figure out the first part of any blank, the next step is C. And the C step is all about what? What? What is it your speech is going to do? What's going to happen as a result of people going through and listening to you? What are they getting out of it? That's very important to understand. Once people know what they're getting, then they pay attention more, and they're more involved. Then you as the speaker can quickly connect with, okay, this is what they're looking for. What the speech is about is what they're looking for. And once you know what they're looking for, then your audience starts to enjoy things. Okay, we're all on the same page. You start to enjoy things. Great. All part of the process. You feel more secure in knowing, okay, this is what we'll be talking about. And that stage of what is all about can blank. Can blank. So the premise formula so far is any blank can blank. And this step of what of can blank is any blank can become a better lawyer, can improve their public speaking, can get a job. It's a powerful step here because it defines what the audience is going to get out of it. You already defined who your audience is. You know that. If you're speaking to lawyers, any lawyer, now you define what it is. Can improve their lawyering, can win their case, can make lots of money. Whatever it is, it's what it is. So your audience is thinking, okay, well, this is for me. All right, great for me. It's perfect for me. What am I going to get out of it? Ah, okay, I'm going to make lots of money, or maybe I'll win the case. That'd be nice. You're speaking to speakers, any speaker, then any speaker can maybe do a great speech. Can sell their speech for lots of money. Can become a better person. Whatever it is. Once you have things targeted with any blank, then it comes the can blank. Can do what? What is it that's going to happen? So when you're drafting your speech, when you're creating the whole thing, you think, okay, well, these are the people I'm talking to, and this is what they're going to get. That simply means you're going through your speech. Make sure everything in your speech has to do with that thing they can get. You say anybody can become a better speaker, and you have a bunch in your speech about how people can learn how to gamble, you're going to throw that out. It's not relevant to that premise. Not relevant to the idea of they can become a better speaker. I know it's simple. You're probably thinking, Tim, this is way too simple. Any blank can blank. I mean, big blanking deal, right? Well, when you're creating a speech, it helps a lot to keep it simple. And if you know you've got a speech where any lawyer can become a better lawyer, and that's what your speech is about, that really can help you focus, really help you figure out exactly what's going on. So now you're 2/3 of the way through the power of the premise process. We're almost there, but there's one part left out, and it's something many speakers leave out. They say anybody can become a better lawyer. Anybody can feel better in their life. Anyone can be happy. Maybe you've heard some of these speeches. But they leave out that last part of the premise formula that's so important. And that is B. Now the B part of the premise formula is It's all about how. It's all about how. So many speakers go out there and say, hey, anybody can be happy, anybody can make more money. They don't tell you how. How is that going to happen? Once you understand how, and you've got this powerful formula, any blank can blank, how, that's powerful. That's useful. People know exactly what they're getting out of it. So the B part is very important. It's a part that kind of pulls everything together. Then the power of the premise really starts to happen. The process comes together, quickly connect. The audience starts to enjoy things, you start to enjoy things more, and people think, ah, that guy owns the stage up there, knows what's going on. That's because you're saying how. So the final part of the premise formula is simply saying by blank. By blank. Right, just to recap. Any blank can blank. And the third part, by blank. That's it. That's the whole premise formula. By blank is how. How are you going to make that happen? So, any lawyer can become a better lawyer by what? By billing more effectively. By trying their cases more strongly. By settling their cases more often. Whatever it is. But it's the technique. It's how to do it. What happens to lots of speakers, most speakers, they say anybody can do whatever, but they don't tell you how. They don't give you a technique. If you give a technique, you're already beyond most speakers out there. Think of the happy speakers. Anybody can be happy. By what? By being happy and thinking happy thoughts and doing things in a happy way. It's not a technique. It's not a technique. Anybody can be happy by doing happiness exercises laid out in this sort of way. Now that's a technique, and it's also a speech. So if you have a speech laid out there by blank, all of a sudden you understand what you're talking about. Once again, it helps you determine what goes into the speech and what goes out of it. You already know, okay, it has to be, if it's any lawyer, all about lawyers. Anything non-lawyer, kick it out. Can win their cases. All right, it's all about winning cases. Anything not about cases, throw it out. By settling more cases. All right, it's about settling cases. Anything not about settling cases, throw it out. And that way, you really are focused on what the speech is about. And since you're so focused on what the speech is about, the audience is going to get it. Audience is going to understand. So lawyers out there are going to think, okay, any lawyer can become a better lawyer by settling more cases. Okay. They may agree, they may disagree, but they'll know what you're talking about. Because you know what you're talking about. So often in speeches, the point just wanders all over the place. Once you have the premise, using Patricia Fripp's premise formula, then you're focused in, then you know what the heck you're talking about. And it starts to make sense. So everything comes together. And that's how. Once you understand how, you have all three parts. You have all three parts of the premise, and you start to create speeches that really are focused, really are directed, and really get that audience motivated to get things done. Premise is like a drill that just kind of drills right down through all the stuff in the speech and really gets to the points that need to be gotten to. That's the power of the premise. To recap, premise is about A, C, and B. First is A. A is all about who. Who does it? Who is this about? Who is this speech for? Any blank. Any blank. And just fill in the blank. Who is this speech meant to be for? Who is it targeted at? You're a professional speaker. Who the heck hired you? That should tell you, right there, what the speech is about. Who it's for. So you don't wander all over the place saying, well, I have a speech about this, a speech about that. No. It's for a certain person, it's for a certain group, it's for a certain something. Any blank. And that's A. That's the A part. Then comes C. C. C is all about what? All about what? What is it that's going on? What is it that the speech is about? What is it you're actually going to get out of that speech? What's the audience is thinking? They're thinking, okay, but what am I going to get out of this speech? What am I going to get here? I do all this stuff, okay, great. What is really this speech about? And that's what? Can blank. So if it's about lawyers, any lawyer can become a better lawyer. All right. Now I know what the speech is about. About becoming a better lawyer. Fine. I get it. Any person can be happier. All right. Speech is about being happier. But you're still not done. There still is the final step, and that's B. B. And B is all about how. How are you going to do it? Most speakers talk about all these things going on, but they really don't get down to how. They don't explain how. Particularly the motivational speakers, the happiness speakers. It's all about, hey, everybody can be happy. How do you do that? How do you make that happen? If you can be a motivational speaker that clearly lays out how to do things, that will be tremendously powerful in your speaking. How? And how is simply about by blank. By blank. Any person can become happier by doing these happiness exercises. It's a technique. It says how you're going to do it. Challenge of speaking is that it's easy to wander all over the place. And without a clear formula to help you focus in your speaking, you go everywhere. The power of the premise kind of focuses you in to what you're talking about. It starts big. It starts big with who, okay? And then it narrows down to what's going to happen. And finally it focuses into how. How are we going to make that work? And the result is a huge pointer to your audience. This is what the speech is about. This is the benefits of it. This is what you're going to get out of this speech. What you're going to learn. When you start using that premise formula, that Patricia premise formula, you discover that it's easy to create the structure of a speech. Because everything you do kind of narrows down to that focus. Your speech is quickly or focused. Any blank. Okay, which ones are you talking about? All right, can blank. All right, what is it going to do it? By blank. What's the how is it going to happen? It's the who, what, how. And once you have the who, what, how of the premise, then your speeches and your speaking come across much simpler. Using that process quickly connects with the audience, quickly makes the speeches more enjoyable, quickly allows you to take command of the stage because you know what you're talking about. And when you know what you're talking about, and you've got a clear description of what you're talking about, then you become an effective speaker. It's easy to wander all over the place, but that's not going to happen if you learn about and use the power of the premise.